watch us type.
I am logged in.
And are you logged in your official one?
Yeah.
No, you got your old school one.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do whatever
Ginkgo Jason.
weird Ginkgo Jason thing now.
Yeah, when was your
Is it
account
AMA?
originally made? Your cake day was like 2006?
My cake day. Let's see. November 10th, 2006.
Not bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's like old school, right?
All
I met
right.
the Reddit guys. How do I? All right, there we go. Yeah, I got it.
We have one multi-question here that's gotten lots of upvotes. We should probably deal with that one.
There's
All right.
one thing I should change real quick, which is the name of our stream. Good.
These are fun. Okay.
Yeah, lots. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Start at the top.
It's a lot of work to actually do here. That's it. Yeah.
All right. How do you want to do this? You can talk. I can type. We can each. I don't know what.
I just we just sit here in silence and type.
Yeah. People watch us typing.
Anyway, I don't know how do we know if anyone's even watching? Yeah.
I think this has there's you have one viewer.
Yeah.
Hello.
See,
Probably
exactly.
Joseph.
I think we should write. Okay, so let me.
right.
Which question should we do first?
We need to do number one first. It's the most
Oh,
upvoted
yeah.
question. It's also 4 questions. So
Okay.
it's,
Yeah.
It's good work. All right.
Cool. All right. Sold. So you're gonna type. You want to?
I can type for a
you
bit.
type
Why
that
don't you opine
Okay.
on scale up in synthetic biology?
Great. Okay. I haven't heard.
Jason is also a terrible speller, so this is saving.
That's accurate.
saving it for myself.
That's good. Jason. Got it. Okay. Yeah. So first question is about the scale-up problem in synthetic biology. So yeah. So I think one of the things that's tricky on this is. Like in that first sentence, it's like synthetic biology. Like what it really means is like, what's your scale-up problem in industrial biotech? Because in therapeutics, there's not much of a scale-up problem, right? So you don't really hear people. There's some caveats to that, like certain types of, T-cell therapies and things where you're like manufacturing for a single patient and it's millions of dollars and all this. But like in the main area of drugs, if it costs more to make it, the therapeutics companies charge more for it. So it's not a big manufacturing problem. Okay. Where you have a big manufacturing problem is things like chemicals, food ingredients, stuff like that, right? So all these animal-free meat companies and they're doing sustainable chemicals, those all really live or die on the cost. And so I think that's the first point to make. So for all of our therapeutic projects and projects with Roche and things we're doing in vaccines, less of an issue. So I think in outside of that, though, yeah, it's a real challenge. You get to really work on it. So what we have is a team at Ginkgo, our deployment team and our fermentation team, whose job it is to essentially have like small scale models of how a fermenter works. So we use these, I don't have one, but like here, can I steal your jug there, Joseph?
Yeah, go for it.
It's like, well, slightly smaller than this, like more like a Coke can size, little fermenters. And they're disposable that you can run. We run, I think we have 144 of them running. So we have like a ton of these things. And what we do is we use those to try different conditions. And then the deployment team's job is to work with a customer based on the best conditions we find in that to get it scaled up to production scale. And we've done that. We've taken whole new processes for some of our fragrance partners and scaled them to 80,000 liter plus fermenters. So it's not, and with Kronos, for example, our partner in Canada, we helped them find a fermentation facility. Our team went out with them to get the first production run going, and they just announced a couple weeks ago they had done first commercial runs there. So that's a lot of Ginkgo carrying the water on that to help them out because they're new to fermentation, right? So that you do answer one.
Well, the other thing I like that you talk about there is like we view it like there's scale up, and we're good at that. We have a team that does that. But then there's also the model of like, when people say there's a scale up challenge, like sometimes it's just like you haven't engineered the cell well enough. Like, so you can treat it as like we're not good at scaling up, or you can treat it as we haven't produced a cell that's so good that no matter how you manufacture it, it's going to be commercially relevant. And so it's hard to decouple it from
100%. Yeah, like
cell engineering.
you need to know how to design a cell to work in a big plant. If you put in the wrong DNA code, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
If you run the fermenters wrong, it's not going to work. But those are two very different problems. Yeah. And so what Ginkgo does is be very good at putting in the right DNA, good at figuring out the right conditions to run the fermenter, and then we have our customers run the fermenter. But if you do those two things right, customers can run the fermenters just fine. That's that's.
I like calling it the recipe.
Yes.
Like
the fermentation recipe. Yeah, exactly right.
All right.
And some of our customers, like in the certain spaces, are even long-time experts at doing that sort of thing.
All right.
Okay.
We got number 2 here. Like this. This is a good teaching moment. Amyris focuses on yeast cells, while Zymergen uses mammalian cells for fermentation. What cell types do we focus on, and why?
Okay. Yeah. So a couple things there. So I think species are a key input into synthetic biology. Like what organisms you can work with definitely matters, right? And this is kind of obvious because a plant can do things very differently than an animal versus a thing. And so we at Ginkgo work in bacterial cells, fungal cells like yeast, as well as mammalian cells. So we do all and then there's a fourth category which would be like plant cell culture. Mm-hmm. What we don't do is seeds or cows, like multicellular organisms. But if it's a single cell, we do it. And then and those companies there that are mentioned, like Amyris works in fungal cells, and Zymergen works in bacterial and fungal cells. I don't think either of them have done projects in mammalian. Mammalian's only really needed if you want to focus on some categories of therapeutics. For all this kind of low cost production, mammalian is not a good choice. Yeah. So if you want to make a low cost, sustainable chemical or something, you would never use mammalian cells.
And the reason for that is mammalian cells have certain characteristics and functions.
So the reason for that is that mammalian cells are usually part of a body, right? And so like bacteria and fungi evolved to live on their own out in the wild and fight it out as single cell organisms. And mammalian cells are hey, I'm part of a leg, right? I got a whole bunch of other stuff that protects me out in the world, like an immune system and all this stuff. And we're no, we want to use you to make a drug. You're going to live alone in a tank. And they're I want to die, right? They're not hardy. And so to keep them alive requires a lot more expense. Yeah. So they're only useful for therapeutics, basically. Yeah.
All right.
Maybe a little bit in need, but
this one's good. Advances in computational biology that will allow simulating entire cell pathways instead of requiring thousands of physical cell tests. Overall, how much simulation versus experimental testing do you do at Ginkgo? Yeah,
that's an awesome question. So my co-founder at Ginkgo, Tom Knight, loves this. He is we will model the cell in a computer, it's gonna, we'll be able to do predictable organism design. So that is the dream, right? And there's no reason there's no physical reason that can't be possible. It is very hard. Right. The reason it is very hard is a cell is not a machine that humans designed. So many pieces of it we don't really understand. So simulating it is difficult because we don't know what all the pieces do. You could collect reams of data and inform machine learning, which we do. But keep in mind, you better have reams of data. And generating data in biology is expensive. And so fortunately, we're very lucky here at Ginkgo that our automation infrastructure means it gives us a really low cost to generate biological data, so we can train those models. It is still no joke, right? Biology is complicated. So our mental model is a little more instead of simulating it like an airplane design would be, it's more like a software developer writing software. You're going to iterate and debug, and that's basically what we do. Hundreds of thousands of unique designs to get one that works.
Yeah, and so the question was overall, how much simulation versus experimental testing do you do at Ginkgo? And I'd say it's fair to say
largely experimental testing and forming models,
yeah, exactly.
But simulation benefits from all that data, and very predictive simulation is still no one's doing it. The closest, you can see stuff like AlphaFold, which is predicting
tiny part of the problem.
Yeah, one piece of one protein. It's lunacy. Being able to predict what the whole cell is doing computationally is still extremely difficult. All
right, the last one on this is a hefty question. So number 4 is, who would you say our
You should
biggest
start just answering some of these other
drug
ones. Okay, you're doing that?
competitors in the
Okay.
field?
All right. Biggest competitors in the field. So honestly, the overwhelming competitor for Ginkgo is companies having their own R&D scientists keep working on this stuff by hand. So our value prop to customers is using our automation and robotics here, we can do cell programming much less expensive than if you were to try to do it yourself by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the, you guys are timing us?
No, we're going to use a copy of our Exploding Cats cardigan from Merch Space to prop this up a little better for you.
Oh, okay. That would be
Gotta
like
get a
the
nice
chess
snack.
block is a good idea because it make us more quickly respond to questions.
Quick.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna refresh here. You pick one.
All right. What made you want to do such a thing?
What did make you want to do such a thing?
So what made me want to do such a thing was that.
You have to respond.
Oh, I gotta write
I don't know where that one is. You
Okay, I
found
found it. Yeah.
You can write for
I
yourself.
can write. I don't know. I thought we
sometimes.
were doing a system here. Okay. All right. I'm on it. I love
My
it.
fingers are getting
I'll
tired.
just have to. It'll just be poor spelling. Yeah.
And what account should people expect answers from you?
Oh, J Kelly 555.
Awesome.
Oh, the OG J Kelly.
Yeah, exactly. I posted this whole.
What are your strategies for enabling the fire-breathing mechanism of the dragons? Are there any examples of biologically generated fire? I feel like we need
You should get Austin in.
Austin for this.
Yeah, you should put him in Adam on Slack and have him reply to something.
All right, let's do that.
We should also say that there has been one other AMA I know in the history of Ginkgo, which was our creative director, Christina Agapakis.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Years ago, she was like an OG AMA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll put a link to that somewhere.
The year is 2100. What will the newest products coming out of Ginkgo's labs be? So I
You
feel
pick
like
it. Put your favorite.
I don't know. Like the point is, I don't have to choose. I have a little platform. I don't have to choose. But I'll come up with something.
Yes.
What do I want? Hey! Oh, I have one for you.
Yay.
This is Tom. Wait, get Tom. Here, I'll speak over.
The one and only
What's that?
Tom Knight. Tom, wait, do we have Tom's glasses somewhere here?
I'll pull up that.
No. Tom can fit. We're good.
In
Come on,
there.
Tom.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, Tom. The year is 2100. I feel like you're the best futurist among us.
Oh my God.
What will the
Yeah, let's
newest
go.
products coming out of Ginkgo's labs be?
Wow. 2100. That's too far in advance.
Well, that's my
I
point.
have
It's
a-
like we don't have to do. We have no idea, right?
Right. I mean, I have a general rule about technology, which is that nothing much interesting happens in 5 years, and everything is different in 10 years. And so, you're going to be surprised what will happen in 10 years, but disappointed in what the progress has been in 5 years.
Okay, but what about
And in 100,
79 years? I do that math. I'm usually bad at addition. I think I got it right.
I think that's probably about right. So let's go backwards. I think that might be the best way of thinking about this. could you, what would you have predicted when the transistor was invented in 1946 or so?
Hmm.
You know, could you have predicted, you know,
A lot of code breaking, a lot of war.
yeah, could you have predicted, you know, an iPhone? Could you have predicted?
You might have been able to.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. So, and so, you know, I think it really is extremely difficult to predict, you know, what happens in that time frame.
There was another question for you. I sent it to Austin, but I think you'll be well suited for it. Where did it go? Okay. What are our strategies for enabling the fire-breathing mechanism of the dragons? Are there examples of biologically generated fire?
Well, there are examples of biologically generated hydrogen. And so,
Yeah, now we're talking.
you know, or methane for that matter.
Mhm.
Both methane and hydrogen are, you know, well-established pathways for doing those. All you
Good
really
answer.
need is, you know, to accumulate enough of that and you know, have some
Without
ignition,
killing us all.
having some ignition process. I think it's entirely.
Teeth could ignite.
Yeah, maybe you know, teeth with like, you know, flint-like properties. I think, you know, you could easily imagine that could be developed.
Love it. Someone else's answer to the 2100 thing is that Ginkgo has successfully terraformed the moon. Lunar colonies are thriving, but the ever-present threat of Cyber Bezos and his Mars-based Amazonian warlords hangs in the air like a perma-smog now covering Earth.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. But it,
All right, let's see what we got here. Poop Ball. It's a great Reddit name. Poop Ball wants to know how we distinguish ourselves from all the other biotech companies out there.
We're a platform.
Well, Poop Ball? I feel like you gotta use his proper name.
Yes, you do.
Maybe a woman. I don't know. I shouldn't have assumed. Let's see. Is it fair to say we're the? I don't know if can we say we're the only horizontal platform? The one we know about.
with our breath, yeah, I would say so. The what helps us distinguish? Yeah, I think the main. You don't have to say the only one, but like we're the overwhelmingly in biotech companies focus on products, and so we're operating as a horizontal platform, which is something that's a lot more common in tech. And so that's sort of how we stand out in biotech.
Is it safe to call tech pure tech? And then there's not pure.
I ain't calling tech. They won that somehow.
They won that? I don't know. I
It's
feel like
okay.
you should reclaim it.
No, we can.
Old school tech? We can call it old school tech where you just used electrons.
I like to call them tech and our stuff real tech.
Oh, real
there
tech.
you go.
Versus, as Jason calls it, real tech.
Living tech.
As TK calls it, living tech.
Did we figure out who Ginkgo Fireworks was?
No, I put it in the some major channel and no one responded. They got it right in May as we were doing.
Right as we
announcements.
announced. Smart.
I wonder if we'll get an
Smart.
email being like, "Give us 10 Ginkgo coin and we'll release your name."
You know, they're going to want free foundry work.
True.
They only accept Dogecoin.
Oh, you should do this Innovation and Competition Act one.
I'll get to that one. I see it there.
You're writing a lot? You're busy?
Yeah, I'm at it. I'm gonna ask Tom some more questions.
Yeah, and I'm looking for some good ones. I'm looking for some good ones here.
Can you program DNA to not grow things like
I think it was Jurassic Park when it came out.
that's really important.
Okay, wait, this is a good one for you, too. What made you want to do such a thing? What are some of your best successes, and what have you learned from your worst failure? You didn't talk about your failure, Jason.
I'll come back.
That's
I'm
a
trying
cop-out.
to parse some questions. I'll come back. Biggest failure.
Yeah. Justin wants me to put my peril sensitive glasses on.
Those are amazing.
We love that.
What made you want to do such a thing? Such a thing.
Such a thing. Well, I don't know what such a thing is, but
Yeah. It's okay.
well, it's the next important technology. In the same way that I was excited about computers in the 1960s, because they were the emerging important technology. It is very clear that this year, biology is by far the most important technology looking forward. So why would you not want to do this? That should be the question.
Well, since Jason copped out of the biggest failure, you're gonna have to do that one. What's your worst
The
failure?
biggest failure. My biggest failure probably is not realizing that biology was as powerful as it obviously is much earlier in my career.
Would it have mattered, like, if you had discovered biology in the 70s? Like, would you have been able to do anything about it, or did we even need other technologies to catch up?
It would have been much more difficult. I will admit that. And I would have been mouth pipetting and working with P32 radioactive samples.
Gross. That's cool. That's like hardcore biotech mouth pipetting era. Come on. Yeah.
Did you ever swallow anything?
I wasn't a mouth pipette. I came after that. That era was like.
That's cool. You gotta experiment a little
Those
bit.
people were badasses. There was like a badass era of what really was like molecular biology.
So did it go from like, now we talk about you have to have good hands? Did you used to have that like good mouth?
Mouth pipetting techniques. Yeah.
Legal.
Feels like it's heading in a bad direction.
But that era of like, you got all these physicists coming into molecular biology. Like Leo Szilard invented the chemostat. It's like one of the guys that was like involved with the Manhattan Project. Like, and
Schrodinger wrote that book, What is Life?
Yeah. It's really cool. It was basically, because we were figuring out all the low level architecture of biology in that era, right? Like, how does DNA get copied? How are proteins made? Like all that. And it was kind of like figuring out the operating system.
Right.
And then now we're coming along trying to program it years later. But that was a cool crowd. Yeah. But Tom, we didn't you off making the computers. There was enough of those molecular biologists.
No,
yeah. I think your path is exactly right. Yeah.
We had a hard decision when I was setting up the lab, in the computer science department, about whether we would embrace radioactivity, and that was actually a challenge to figure out whether that was a worthwhile thing to do, given all of the potential dangers, but also all of the regulatory issues that came with that. I believe I decided correctly. No, not worth it.
Living tech as a service in the coming year. LTAAS.
Living tech.
Instead of like SaaS, software as a service. Living tech as a service. What would we call it instead?
Tom, we have a question here. Are you the inspiration for any characters in Jurassic Park? If so,
I don't think so, although one never knows. I could be an archetype for one of those characters. I don't know whether I was inspirational.
Did you ever come across Crichton?
no, I really dislike a lot of what he wrote scientifically.
Mm.
It's, the film was great, but, if you look at the novels that Crichton wrote, a lot of them are very anti-scientific in many respects. I really don't like them.
Tom, a random one. Mo Regrets asks, can you re-engineer cilantro so my wife doesn't get offended by its taste?
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's easier
We could
probably
totally-
for us to re-engineer his wife.
it's a hard.
Multi-genetic trait.
We know.
Well,
what-
yeah, because it's the
we know
soak
what
thing.
the
It's
gene-
like,
yeah,
the
it's a
soak
thing.
thing, yeah.
We know what the gene is. We
Yeah,
know
if
what
it's
the
a single
mutation
thing.
is. It's a single mutation. In a couple of years, we can cure her.
Do you want me to get you your laptop ready?
Yes,
Nah.
Let you-
No, I think
let-
Tom should keep answering questions.
I'm
Yeah.
just
What's another?
basking in the.
Wait,
in the
fine, go all the way to
experience.
the bottom here.
Let's find some more.
Yeah, well, that one's kind of gross.
Sure, there's lots of random questions.
Austin put some Amazon link. Hilarious. I'll put this into the.
So where are you broadcasting this, Joseph?
Yeah,
The
so
world.
we're on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Okay.
And anybody that's watching this that has no idea what's going on, you should be able to click a link somewhere in the stream or on our Twitter to find the Reddit AMA that we're using as the source for all these questions. It was posted about 48 minutes ago on r/IMA.
Jason, your typing skills have rubbed off on me. What was the hardest thing about building the computing industry before you switched over to real technology?
This is glib, but I will say it. One of the hardest things was that light bulbs burned out, which meant that the indicator lights on computers were not reliable. So before light emitting diodes, you never knew whether the indicator was off because it was supposed to be off, or whether it was that the bulb was burned out.
Frustrating.
And that's how you program computers. Well, that's not my favorite thing, is this sort of like that you came from that era of computing, Tom, where like to program a computer you had to be an electrical engineer.
Really helped.
Yeah, right? Like how the heck are we supposed to know how the thing works? Right? Like, and how could you write programs if you didn't know how it worked? And like,
how did you fix it?
yeah, and like that's totally, I think, lost on modern software developers, like that era, right? Because it was small, it wasn't that many people, it was a long time ago, and that's very much where we are today with self-programming, in my opinion.
That's exactly right.
And so, if you don't know that history of computing and how like brutal it was, and then where it went to, you see where self-programming is saying, like, this seems really hard. You're like, yes, but it's getting better, right? Like twice as good every year, right? So it's going to get easier. And if you've seen it before, I think it gives you or I don't know. I assume it gives you the fortitude to power through, the 90s and the 2000s of sit by out there.
Definitely. It was a very familiar experience in many respects. Booting up biology and booting up computers were much more similar than I would have anticipated.
Yeah. Actually, Tom may have some opinions about the Innovation and Competition Act. This is the Endless Frontiers Act it's going to like double NSF's budget and stuff. There's a question about what kind of developments do you see in SynBio coming from that?
You good too?
I'll take. Yeah, I'm gonna add to it too. Are you skeptical of?
I am a skeptic. I hope to be wrong, but typically NSF funds research which is incremental and often research which has already been done, and what we really need is radical ideas and truly different ways of approaching some of these problems. And historically in computing, that has happened with DARPA support rather than NSF support.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking. I kind of agree with you on the. Like DARPA's kind of cracked that nut for the breakthrough research. I know that like Ginkgo wouldn't exist without NSF SBIRs and that sort of like.
Sure.
So I wonder if like that kind of, like to me, it's like that translational gap for certain classes of companies that are like too weird to get venture funding, basically.
Yeah.
I think that there's an opportunity there for.
Right, and if you look at the act, I think there's some evidence that people understand this. That there's some, I think there's some attention being paid to funding more innovative proposals. We'll see. I think the basic way in which that funding gets done, in these investigator-driven panels, really does not encourage the kind of out-of-the-box thinking that is really often required.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, my model would be like, don't even try. Like the NSF could basically evaluate if the tech is BS or not, right?
Yeah.
And then, other than that, throw some money at it. Let the startup try to make some progress, and then they can go. Like if they can get out of the scientific risk era, then they can go to the traditional venture community who is just looking at the market risk, right?
Exactly.
And so, like, honestly, they shouldn't. I would say just spray and pray, and use the NSF's like reviewer network just to make sure that the work is real, right? As opposed to like, oh, I really believe this market, like what do they know, right? But they actually could provide a bar that would at least like clear out like nonsensical stuff, leaving aside like funding the things that aren't even really meant to be companies, right? Like DARPA putting in self-driving car challenge 15 years ago was just like, hey, listen, this is obviously way too early to go to market as a company, but like, let's just throw money at it and see what people can do. Like that is like DARPA magic, right? You see it again with mRNA vaccines. Like, like DARPA just does this again and again. I think they probably are the right home for that stuff, but maybe NSF could do something different. I don't know.
I mean, the magic of DARPA is that there's individual program managers that make all of the decisions, and so it's not a committee. It is an individual, and that has a huge impact in terms of the barrier that it takes to reach a conclusion.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so they have like more of a like kind of a centralized program lead who just can like kind of green light stuff without a big committee.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. It's not. It literally is one person.
That's cool. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of neat actually. As far as more places haven't. Why do you think it hasn't been replicated more?
It requires courage on the part of the people who are providing the money to allow that to happen. And inevitably, some bad things get funded.
Right, some junk's gotta get funded.
And so you
You
have
gotta
to
tolerate that.
you have to be able to tolerate that.
Yeah.
And NSF and its like find it very difficult to be able to tolerate being laughed at.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which Pokemon we make first and why? That's an excellent question.
The answer is all of them.
Gotta make them all.
When is Bioworks 6 coming?
Under construction now.
Yeah. Yeah, Troika says it's, yeah.
That's
That
third
was a
floor.
That's a mess up.
Or Barry would know. Just
That's 27-3 West.
I have an answer. I'm not sure if it's public yet, but
sorry, not sure. You can. What is the answer?
I think Greg said sometime in August should be we should have 200,000 operational square feet, which includes that.
Cool.
Mhm.
Which is exciting.
That's
Tom, what's your official title? People are asking. Would you mind introducing yourself?
We've always said DNA hacker.
yeah.
Oh,
That's what's on my business card. I think we should stick to it.
Let's do it. Co-founder and DNA hacker. I have some questions here. I'm happy to voice some silly, some interesting one. Here's an interesting one. It's about the business. It says, since you open up your foundry to anybody, is it possible for you to develop strains for two directly competing companies? For example, I know that you're working closely with Motif, but if another plant-based food company comes along and says, I can do what Motif is doing, but better, can they come to you for their strain development? How would that work? So, yeah, working on similar projects.
Are you going to type? Or do you want me to? I
I'm,
don't know. whether-
I'm throwing that to y'all when we have a chance.
Yeah. But you're going to write the reply.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to transcribe you.
The way to think about Ginkgo is like kind of like Amazon Web Services or something, or like a cloud service provider, where they can work with competing companies because they're essentially infrastructure for the industry, or like an operating system. Plenty of apps that competed with each other got developed for Windows or Apple OS, right? And so that's how we see the world. So yeah, absolutely, right? We can work with competing companies. What we can't do is give code that we develop for one customer for a product to their competitor for that product, right? So we do develop custom things for our partners that they can go out and market. And so that's the distinction. But yeah, we're very happy to work with companies across the space.
Brilliant, thank you. And as a quick reminder for anyone on stream that's not asking a question, you can go to our Twitter to find the Reddit link. Again, there's a Reddit link on our Twitter to submit questions of your own that Jason, Anne-Marie, and Tom are responding to.
Do we have an API, Tom?
Ooh, one day.
I think we have a early stages of an API in some portions of the foundry. It is not as well developed as it should be, and that is I would say that's an active area of development.
And our internal teams engage through that, basically our internal program teams.
Yes, exactly.
All right, give Tom another question.
I've got to refresh here, get the latest hot questions.
I slapped you the answer to that one.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you were writing in Reddit. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. That was coming from the other. Okay. I'll put it in. Thanks.
Sorry.
Uh,
Yeah, more questions from. I think we might be expecting some special guests, and also if anyone from Ginkgo is watching, there's a lot of awful empty space on that window.
Are you encouraging photo bombing?
In case they,
Live stream bombers?
Yeah,
these folks
like-
like to make memes or Ginkgo signs.
Oh, wait, this one's kind of cool. Some far off hypotheticals here, but looking at the future of the industry, do you see organic factories, in quotes, replacing the current manufacturing processes we take for granted today? Also, I've long held the belief that real AI is not possible using inorganic material. To me, DNA is the programming language / software, and our bodies are the hardware. Do you guys buy into this? And finally, if we can share them, our views on this technology when it comes to national security. Undoubtedly, any country that is able to harness synthetic biology is going to have a huge leg up. Do you see your tech as something to be protected, or is it more of an open source fad? Excited investor.
Well, those are several questions.
And the Reddit crew is in the multi-question game for sure. It's good.
Probably
The
take it-
AI
take it.
is not possible using inorganic material.
Yeah, I like the. What do you think about that, Tom? You bet.
That's
So
a good
Tom
one.
came up through Gen 1 AI,
That's right.
right? Like the like Tom, you were there at the start of thinking machines, right?
Yes, I was.
Yeah, that's like old school. Cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
This is what's
Do you know
called.
about
What
thinking?
are
Do you
thinking
know about
machines?
thinking
No,
machines,
tell-
Anna Marie?
tell the world
See?
about thinking
Yeah,
machines.
you gotta. That's.
Well, that's
can't buy that.
it's what's
Regret.
called Go
Feynman worked at thinking machines.
Yes, he did.
Woo!
Go-Fi.
That's
Good
Go-Fi.
old-fashioned AI.
Go, Fi, go.
So what was what was that?
I think that there's no reason why, in fact, I think there's every reason to believe that, that the technology of the conventional electronic computing will in fact be the way in which, artificial intelligence will be developed.
Wait, sorry. So you think it'll be conventional electronic computing? That's where AI is going to get developed.
Yes.
Okay.
And I can give you some reasons for that. The main one is that electronics, is and will continue to be much faster than anything that we can develop biologically. An important caveat to that is to realize that the way in which that electronic system is constructed is almost certainly not going to be with the same technologies that we are using today, but in fact will almost certainly be reliant on biology as a way of building the electronics. And that's because biology is much better at precision, positioning of atoms, and that's what's necessary to make precision electronics at the scale that we will be using.
I like it. Yeah, and then on the national security front, like open source or like it's protected. And my sense is if it's not us, like somebody's going to make biology easier to engineer. We have to have biosecurity, but like keeping it inside is probably not the way to protect it.
Well, this goes back to what I often say in response to that, which is that I was told many years ago by JCR Licklider that if you have a powerful technology and you're trying to protect it, there are only two ways of doing it. One is you can try very hard to keep it a secret, and the other is, as he quaintly put it, you can run like hell. And and so there is no way that we are going to be able to keep biology secret. That leaves only one alternative, and we are in the business of running like hell.
And like run like hell towards what? Towards like developing biosecurity?
To being the best in the world at understanding and building biological systems for whatever applications are important to us.
And the thing I like about it is a lot of those biosecurity tools that would let you run like hell and get ahead of people being able to do bad stuff look a lot like putting infectious disease to bed.
Yes.
You know, right? Like it's shit we should be doing anyway. You know, right? That like what we allow globally with regard to infectious disease is a joke. You know, and you know, and we're getting a taste of, you know, in richer countries right now of what it's like in a lot of the parts of the world all the time. You know, right? And that it's just such a, you know, like. Look, we ought to take care of that problem while we're solving the biosecurity thing. It seems doable to do both together. In fact, I don't think you can solve one without the other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Joseph, any other good questions for Tom?
Yeah. There's a few
Are you
here.
a Pokemon follower?
I'm afraid I'm not.
Yeah,
No,
maybe.
neither.
See if let's see if we got a good answer. Here we go.
My kids were growing up before Pokemon really became a thing.
Shoot, I
You
have a
need some
question for you,
Magic the
Tom.
Gathering.
The question for you, Tom, is Jazz2575 asks, what is one problem you wish a company client would bring to Ginkgo to solve, or what current problem would you most wish to solve using synthetic biology?
There are so many to choose from. I think anyone who's seriously looks at what's happening in the world, I think the number one problem has to be climate change. And I think that anything we can do to mitigate climate change would be pretty much on the top of my list.
And what's number 2?
Pandemic preparedness.
Excellent. Glad it's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, surely in a world of massive climate change, there'll be more pirates. Can you expand on that answer a little bit?
More
Pirates?
Oh,
Pirates, for sure.
Well, I'm not sure, in the short term, what specifically, are the most important things that we could look at. There are some that come to mind. I think carbon capture from chimneys of coal burning or oil or gas burning furnaces probably is the low-hanging fruit. Another major source would be to start looking at the individual big contributors, and that would include things like methane emission from cows. It would include
Typical.
I don't know what you sent out there, Joseph. But
It
must have worked.
We're trying to see how many people still have their Halloween costumes on campus. Jason, I have a question here. So you said quote, let me make sure I get this right. You said, "Hell yeah, solar punk factories are the future." Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit more about what that means for the uninitiated?
Yeah. So there's this pretty cool vibe going around recently of this stuff called solar punk. Have you seen this stuff?
No.
Oh, and you would like it. It's really cool. So it's sort of like it's like a envisioned future, in the same way like cyberpunk or steampunk would have been.
Sure.
Okay. But it's like, imagine we solve climate change in a way that's not like puritanical. In other words, like not because we gave up everything, but because we like invented our way out of it, and we came up with like cities that are way more green, you know, right? And it's like you've got robots, but they're picking oranges, you know, right? Like there's like a merging of tech and bio in a really cool fashion, and it's a lot about like kind of abundance post scarcity stuff, and like, you know, like weaving that in on the economic side and everything else. So it's kind of like a little bit of a sci-fi category, a little bit of like an anime sort of aesthetic. I'll show you some pictures of it. You would think it was cool. It's like your glasses you just had on there. But those are probably more steampunk, but I'll give it to you anyway. But yeah, it looks like this, you know.
Oh wow!
Right?
Oh yeah,
For
very
the
nice.
people.
Yeah, well, I'll put a link. But
yeah, you could tweet it out too.
Yeah.
Just like Google image search solar punk.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was just saying.
Solar punk.
Solar punk, and we saw a Chobani ad.
Yeah, that was
that
cool.
captures
I
this
thought that was
vibe.
really nice. Yeah.
It's beautifully done, creative from them.
Yeah, I feel like that. I think it's like the synbio sort of future is, or at least synbio is a piece of that puzzle for sure.
Yeah, I could get into that.
Yes. All right, then that's happening. I feel it.
Jason, it's _ Yosef wished you a happy birthday. Is it your birthday today?
With my birthday?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, but your
No, not
your
my cake day. It's
yeah,
not my
fine,
cake day.
you
No,
meant.
I wish. No, November. Although I do have 14-year. Maybe not on my birthday. I like that though.
Yeah.
I'm gonna reply to that anyway. Okay. Okay, I'll answer the first part of this question, Tom. You should noodle on. I'm a computer data scientist, very interested in getting into the field of synthetic biology. Do you see a future in which engineering organisms will be as structured as computer design and programming? What do you anticipate will be the major stumbling blocks for this line of development? Or why don't you give me that one? I'll answer.
I think it absolutely is, you know, in the cards. We will be able, especially for the relatively simple organisms like bacteria. I think, you know, it's within reach, and you know, it's I think it should be a major technical goal of the community to be you know, pushing in that direction.
What makes an organism simpler?
Well, in the case of bacteria, you know, it's pretty straightforward. There's much less in the way of compartments inside the organism. So it's crudely speaking, there's an inside and an outside of a bacteria.
Yeah.
And you know, whereas in a mammalian cell, for example, there are probably a half a dozen different kinds of compartments. There's, you know, an inside, but inside of the cell, there's, you know, a nucleus, there's mitochondria, you know, there's usually an endoplasmic reticulum and a Golgi body, and you know, it goes on and on.
Got it.
And then, you know, in addition, there's complexity, much higher complexity in terms of the structure of the DNA in a mammalian cell. You know, it's organized with, you know, histones. It is decorated with, you know, with proteins that you know, bind it and hold it in particular configurations. You know, the DNA in mammalian cells is you know, is methylated, and you know, that controls expression of you know, and
So there's like extra layers of complexity on top of even just the low level digital code before you get to how it's being executed in the cell, and then that has layers of complexity around organelles and everything else.
And there's differentiation of those cells, so they're,
Yeah.
you know, they may be genetically identical, but they may be, you know, behaving very, very differently.
Okay, then fine. So for the simple organisms, I'll give you that. Forget the mammalian cells. So bacterial, inside, outside, simpler DNA structure. What are going to be the stumbling blocks towards you know, a future where it's as structured as computer design and programming?
I think there's a lot we don't know about how cells work.
Yeah.
And you know, so
Won't we just learn all that?
we should learn all of that. We have not learned all of that.
Yeah.
And you know, so I think, you know, that's job one, and then course, the way we learn about those things, I think Feynman taught us this. The way you learn those things is by building them.
Yeah.
And so, it will be crucial as part of that education as to how these work. We will need to go beyond simply tinkering with the cells.
Yeah. So this is, in other words, designing cells for the purposes of understanding how all the pieces work.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
This is Austin's
I
response.
already put it in.
Yeah. Goofy. That's awesome. We love that. Sorry, that was
Yeah.
What was that a picture of?
I just see this book, Tom. Joseph has it. It's like how to make a dragon, basically.
Oh, okay, good.
So even if we understood them completely, then what do you think? What other stumbling blocks would there be? Or is that pretty much the limiter? Like once you really know what the hell's going on with them, at that point it's now an engineering problem. You're good to go.
I think, I don't know whether this is true, but I believe that that's true. And I think there may be levels of complexity that I'm missing. It could be, for example, that things like design of proteins is to do specific jobs is much more difficult than we think.
Yeah.
It could be that there's feedback mechanisms in cells that are have developed evolutionarily that it will be very, very difficult for us to understand.
Yeah.
So I think it will be a gradual process. I don't think that it will be we will show up one day and we will say we will know it all.
Yeah. Well, there's clearly value in engineering, even when you don't know it all.
Sure.
Right? Like, I mean, we
That's
see
what
it.
we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that kind of implies it will absolutely be a gradual process because at each new level we kind of understand it, but we'll go off and develop products at that level of understanding, and then we'll tick up another level, and kind of off we go, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've got a question here. I can transcribe your answer again. Vimala pointed it out. It comes from Anarchy with 2 I's, 17. 2-part question. 1, how do you plan on overcoming skepticism about GMOs? And 2, do you think carbon taxes will be a big boost to biological manufacturing?
Well, the answer to 2, I think it would be yes, but I don't know if you're going to get a carbon tax passed. So, but clearly, I think that would be. I think you are starting to get hints of this. Like you're starting to see some of the agriculture industry thinking about traits like that could help plants sequester carbon better, or like soils be richer and things like that. It's definitely Wild West right now. Like it's still difficult to monitor it and everything else, but you're starting to. That could become a thing. I don't know if it'll end up being governments that do it, or it'll be like consumer pressure on companies to like offset. They'll be like, hey, like Apple's like, we'll pay for this right now. Like they're paying for carbon credits. Companies are popping up to offer these things.
They all want to be neutral or
right. So they're effectively paying a carbon tax. It's just not a government regulated one, right? I think that'll get the ball rolling. I think to do it at the scale. I mean, we need governments to step up, obviously, to like really dent climate change. So I'd love to see it, but I don't know if we're going to see it. What was the first one? GMOs.
Skepticism, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's an awesome topic. Is this in the Reddit post or is this on the thing?
Yeah, it's on Reddit. Vim is taken.
Oh, cool.
Taking
notes. Okay, yeah. Well, we had that editorial in the New York Times like 5 or 6
we can
years
link to
ago. They put a link to. I think that captures, I'd say, the ginkgo position well. And although I wrote it, it was highly influenced by Christina Agapakis, our creative director here at Ginkgo. And the spirit of that is scientists and engineers like to think that people's resistance to GMOs, especially in food, is like an education problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like you just need to like show the right safety study and and the reality is it's not an education problem. It's a trust problem. Right? It is people saying, I don't trust Monsanto, say, to be wielding powerful technology in my interest. And when you reframe it that way, then it's kind of obvious, right? This New York Times editorial we wrote said, hey, I run a GMO company, I think we should label GMOs, right? And that was, at the time, this is like the GMO labeling laws were being debated, all the companies were against it and all this. And in the framework of, do you trust this organization? Well, the easiest way to destroy trust is to be not transparent, right? Like, oh, I want to know if this is in my food, I'm going to give it to my kids. No, I'm not going to tell you, right? And so like that like thus clearly, yeah.
Sorry. Gotta be
Trust, exactly. Trust the
This
people
company,
deploying
We're
powerful
responsible.
technology. Yeah. You should post our old recruiting video with Tom.
Maybe that's
but,
go ahead.
but anyway, yeah. So our view on GM is that's the way you get at it. You basically are proud of it.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have you have an I Heart GMO sticker on your computer. Right? Yeah. There you go. Right. Like the people who care how their products are made are exactly, which is like the kind of people that look at a label for food, are exactly the kind of people who should love GM. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be a greener way to make everything. So like we should embrace that. We should say like, yeah, actually we love the kind of, because most people or many people just don't give a shit. They're like, I don't care how my products are made. I don't care if it's coming out of it's ruining the planet. The people who do care are exactly the ones that are going to drive biotechnology. So all we got to do is be transparent and have them and give them reason to trust us, right? And I think you can win it. And that's been the case in therapeutics, right? Half of your drugs are GMOs. Nobody bats an eye because it's clear the FDA is very transparent about it. You know it's going to be in the product and it offers you something you want, and so people make that trade all the time. Even in food, now you fast forward 5 years, you have fast forward 5 years and Impossible Foods has the Impossible Burger with a GM hemoglobin in it. And everybody's like, this sounds great, right? It's like less animal agriculture, better for the environment. Oh yeah, there's some GM in there, but you look on Impossible's website, they show you exactly how they do it. They show you the fermenters. It's awesome, right? And that's in food. And food is by far the most sensitive place for GMOs. So I really think it's, it's not a nothing, but I do think it is, if you approach it the right way and try to build trust, I think that, it's a solar punk future. Like people will get behind it who want to fix climate change.
And I think, you sort of alluded to this, but I think a key aspect is demonstrating to the public that there is a benefit to them as opposed to a benefit to Monsanto.
Yes. Correct. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. That it's there. It is doing something better. And that doesn't it can either be for them personally, that this tastes better. It can be this tastes better and it's better for the environment, and the environment is also for me, right? Like that, I agree. I couldn't agree with you more, Tom. Yeah. Yeah, and you just show the founder numbers. I don't know if we have those up on a tweet or something. I've definitely seen them posted around, but those are rad. Those are what we think are important.
So I don't have a sense. Are we getting a lot of good questions?
We have hundreds of questions. Yeah, too many of them. Or maybe not too many. We love the question. We're trying to go as fast as we can.
Career sake.
So it seems we have an infiltrator. There's someone called Ginkgo Biotech that started responding to questions.
Would you like to give the history of Ginkgo Biotech?
I barely. I mean, I have a riff on Jason's transparency point, which is that like the reason that things are made, like the walls to the labs, the foundries here are made out of glass, is because we want people to see what's going on, and we like to joke about things that could go wrong or decisions not to make, because we want it to be easy to say what we shouldn't do,
Yeah.
and to make fun of people who would do like the wrong thing and take it seriously and be all high-minded
Yeah.
about it. But I actually don't. I mean, Ginkgo's whimsy predates me and is one of the reasons I'm here. So I don't super know the history. Yeah. When did Ginkgo come about?
Somebody wrote a blog. Somebody wrote a blog post about.
You're like one of those people knows how to
Back in I must have been like right when we did Y Combinator, so I think like 2014. There was there was a blog post.
Yeah.
That was about Ginkgo, and because our name is like it is like impossible to spell, right?
Mm.
Like I get it, like. But by the way, people may forget everyone used to spell Google wrong at the beginning before it got all famous. So I think like Ginkgo will ultimately be spelled right by everybody. It ends in go. But this person wrote the blog post, and like it was the worst getting wrong of the name we'd ever seen. It was Ginkgo Biotech, and so. Actually, my only other more favorite one than that was when I visited Lockheed and they put me in as Ginkgo Fireworks. I don't know if you ever saw that name tag I got. I still have it at home. Yeah, Ginkgo Fireworks. I was like, oh, Lockheed. You know one thing. But yeah, we did. So the Ginkgo Biotech instantaneously became like, our evil competitor that does all the biotech that we wouldn't do here at Ginkgo. So anyway, and also just like bad ideas. So Ginkgo's pretty funny. Comes up all the time. But anyway, I'm glad it's entered the Reddit chat. We'll see what Ginkgo has to say. Oh, he's fucking Ginkgo. Yeah.
Ginkgo's here.
Yeah.
For example, why haven't you engineered mushrooms with audible communication and hearing? Hi, Ginkgo Biotech here. We did that, but they were super annoying, so we killed the program.
Good.
Thank you, Ginkgo. Awesome. No, it's yes.
We'll defeat them.
Glad we have the help.
What skill sets? This is good for you, John. What skill sets will future bioengineers need that they don't have now? What will the Ginkgo employee in 10, 20, or 30 plus years need to know? Less, because we're going to make it easier? Like, do you think they'll need to know less or more? That's like the first question. Did computer scientists get smarter or dumber over time?
Probably mostly dumber. So yeah, I would say they probably need to know less. That doesn't mean that we will not need a small number of people who know more. I think the majority of the people will probably not need to know as much.
And that's a boon, right? Like it lowers the barrier. You can
That's
because
right.
you can copy code from Stack Overflow to make your stuff work.
That's exactly right.
I have a question here in the chat. It's from QPARE QPARE007. So license to kill. It says, "Hi, I am an entrepreneur, and I believe that quantum computing will be able to help fight many diseases by identifying innovative medicine. Do you work with quantum computing drug design?"
Don't ask Tom about quantum computing. You made a mistake. What's the name again?
QPARE007.
QPARE007 has made a mistake.
Fatal
Yeah.
error.
You're unfortunately asking a famous computer architect about quantum computing, so you're going to get a real answer. So, Tom, go ahead. Yeah.
I would say quantum computing is extremely effective for a small class of problems. And there may be some, there may be specific molecular problems that it is very well suited for, but for the vast majority of the computational problems that we need to solve in biology, it will have no effect of any significance.
What limits? What are the things you can, just for my edification, what can you actually apply it to?
It's great if you want to factor numbers.
Okay. Yeah.
Possibly, although I will say also, the largest number that it has factored so far is 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Toughy.
there's two difficulties. One is that is a very limited range of problems that it is applicable to. The second one is we can't actually build them.
Got it. Yeah.
And so, I think, there's, the success of quantum computing, I think, is, rests on solving at least the second one of those problems. We need to actually be able to build them, and we need to be able to build them at scale and relatively cheaply, with respect to what we are able to do right now. And the second one is, even if you have, excellent quantum computers, they are almost certainly not as good for the vast majority of problems as conventional computers will be.
Got it.
Hey.
Hey,
No
Patrick.
buttons. There are no buttons in here. None.
I think, Patrick, I'm going to let you take my
Take the
seat.
hot seat.
Yeah. Love it.
And,
So do you want?
No. Yeah. Oh,
Thank
no,
you so
that's
much,
really
Tom.
making it
Yeah.
three of us.
And Tom, people can follow you on the internet at Tom Knights in Bio on Twitter, can they not?
Yes, they can.
Tom showed up just to boost his Twitter following.
You can continue the AMA there.
Wait,
Now we
Patrick,
have
I had such a good one for you.
someone who has pushed more buttons to make DNA than anyone else on Earth, probably.
Yeah, just major downgrade. Tom leaves, I come in.
It's a bit of a tough act to follow.
Yeah.
Are you gonna write your own responses? Are you a redditor?
Oh, I don't remember my Reddit account.
Not nearly as cool as Jason.
No, I did. I was on Reddit like 10 years ago in grad school because I did a live stream of a 48-hour experiment that I did, and I did a Reddit thread to.
Amazing.
Yeah, people would ask me questions while I did it. But
Can we find that?
No.
Yeah. No. No, you can't. No.
You got
definitely
some
not.
good music videos from the like
yeah, but
original, like,
yeah,
past over years.
on YouTube, yeah.
Those have to exist.
But I can try and I can find the thread here. Yeah, or find the.
So we have a question here that I would love to ask y'all. It's from Vimla found this. Thank you. It's from Cold Eyes. I was asked a few minutes ago. So it says the Facebook developer who made the like button did so purely to spread joy, but there was no foresight into how much anxiety it would create in social media. My question is this: what are you doing to try to tackle the potential moral or ethical problems your technology may create before those problems manifest?
Yeah, this is a great topic. So I think there's like a big lesson from the tech platforms here. And it's rooted, if you look historically at I'd say like the core philosophy of a lot of tech was, hey, I'm developing a tool. It's not my responsibility for how that tool is used. Right? Like, so if I'm at YouTube, my job is to make sure the bits are flowing through the pipes as fast as possible. It's not my responsibility if your 8-year-old is on YouTube 9 hours a day, right?
Sure.
And so there's a like that was like pretty, I think, fundamental. And you saw something, you had like Google, Paul Buckeye there with the dude, don't be evil stuff, right? But like that thread runs real deep in that sort of engineering community, I'd say, almost in general. And so I think the first thing you do is you come out and you say you do care how your platform is used. Right? In other words, like, you are actually not taking the position that, like, oh, my job is to follow the law, but otherwise not care. Like, I actually have to actively care. And you are seeing this now. This is exactly what the tech platforms are basically waking up to this and saying, like, I want to do editorial stuff and yada yada. You got to figure it out, right? But like, it's because they're like coming later to the fact that they do have to care, like what's happening on the platform. And so I think that's where you start. That you're far from done by just accepting that shitty reality, and that now it's like, I mean, not shitty, but it's like, it's a lot of work once you decide you're going to care. And so now it's like, okay, what's the best way to care? And I think this is a journey that never ends, basically. But what we've been thinking at Ginkgo is, and by the way, we're very open to good thoughts on this stuff, is, you know, and scientists and engineers hate to hear this, but the people who build technology, like, leave bits of themselves in it, right? You know, and so like the background of those people, like ends up in the product. And so there's like a history of this going poorly. You know, for example, the first heart valves were too small for women's hearts, right? You know, and you had like male engineering teams. You had the first Kodak film that didn't resolve black people. You know, right? Like that there is this embedding of backgrounds in the tech. And so one of the solutions we've been thinking about is making sure that we have folks on the team who can help us see around corners on how the technology could be misused, because they come from groups who would likely be negatively impacted by new technologies in general or biotech specifically. So I'll give you an example. Like in the global south, there's a pretty spotty history with like agricultural biotech. So it would be great to have, like, you know, more people from the global south who work at Ginkgo who can help speak when as those issues arise on the ag side and have like lived experience there. Post-COVID, I think the awareness of biology from a national security standpoint is very, very evident. It shut our whole country down for a year. So I think you should expect an elevation in conversations around the Biological Weapons Control Act and things like that and so on, treaty. And so like, having veterans on the team here at Ginkgo is a smart idea. Like they've lived that shit, right? And so that, and then of course, like underrepresented minorities, genders, like end up on the short end of the stick on any new technological change over and over again. And so one of our answers is have a wider range of people building the technology, wider range of backgrounds to help us catch and see around those corners on how it might be misused and build the platform more robustly. And then and that's like all the social side of the house. And then the other thing is, just to be very blunt about it, is you can deploy technical tools, right? And so like places like Facebook do this obviously for some of the obvious stuff, like to catch, you know, whether it's pornography or other things spreading. Like we will have a similar thing, and that is like biosecurity. So like we talked about this a little bit earlier, but yeah, fuck yeah, infectious diseases, we shouldn't have that stuff. You know, like we're like unpatched systems. We like slapped on a mask as like, you know, like pretty much the world's dumbest patch, you know, right? Like we got to do some work on our ability to manage like the viruses that are spreading around just in the natural world. And so I think that whole line of technology building, you know, which we were happy to participate in, you know, in our small way during the pandemic, I think that is a great opportunity. Also, so you're gonna have the social and the technical and try our fucking best, and that's it. Yeah, I think that's how you do it. But it starts from caring at the beginning. Yeah.
So yeah, everyone that's already here has to do the work of caring. And then,
Oh man, that's a good Tom story, but I can paraphrase it.
I was gonna say, and then people should, anyone interested in either of those two questions should check out the jobs that are over now on Lever and consider.
Oh, what jobs is there certain ones on there that are particularly, or you just mean across all of Ginkgo?
Just
Oh,
across all
hell
of
yeah.
Ginkgo, we have dozens of
Yeah.
for anyone that.
For sure, you should post that on the Reddit thread. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Oh, you know, somebody was asking about where the Ginkgo name came from. So I can give my like quick version, Jason, and you can tell me where I got it wrong.
We know where Grinko came from before Ginkgo. So
Yeah.
shows you.
Yeah.
But I think it's pretty obvious that the folks here at Ginkgo are pretty inspired by Jurassic Park. Both we just talked about responsible use of platforms, right? So it makes sense to talk about a movie where people create a platform where biology killed a bunch of people.
Yeah.
So we like Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We learned our lessons from Jurassic Park as the investment in biosecurity, but the Ginkgo organism is pretty interesting from that standpoint because it is like one of the plants that basically hasn't changed in like 65 plus million years. So it's interesting from the standpoint that it dates back to the age of the dinosaurs. It is also a survivor. It's the only surviving species of its lineage that survived, and plus the leaf.
It has its own phylum.
Yeah.
Ginkgo, the only surviving member of the whole phylum. That's crazy. You're like kingdom, phylum, class, order, right? Like from elementary school, it's like kingdom, plant, phylum, Ginkgo, last man standing, Ginkgo tree. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
So I think it was like I think you guys had already decided had to have some sort of organism name to it.
Yeah. We wanted to have. we wanted to have some organism in there, and then Tom suggested the ginkgo. Plus, that's a cool leaf.
Yeah.
The shape is very iconic. And then I came to find out after we named the company Ginkgo that there is an extraordinary amount of ginkgo merchandise out in the world, which I started to receive as Christmas presents from my well-meaning family members, and I finally had to cut it off. I had ginkgo, candles, ginkgo napkin holders, ginkgo, endless ginkgo doormat, ginkgo nightlight.
What is ginkgo used for? Like the
That was something that's memory.
Memory?
I mean, it's also a funny thing. When we first started commercially, we were working in the flavored fragrance industry, which is directly adjacent to supplements and stuff. And so literally everybody would always assume we were a ginkgo biloba natural extract company at every single one. And we would go around these convention shows and go up, be like, I'm from Ginkgo Bioworks. Like, oh yeah, we've been meaning to get more into supplements. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ.
So I'm gonna say ginkgo. Jason loves getting lots of ginkgo merch. Feel free to send it to him at 27 Draddock Avenue, Boston, Massachusetts, 02221. We'll have to get a bigger.
We're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
Yeah, Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about your work for folks that might not know you from our wonderful Investor Day video on YouTube?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I saw the video.
He's like, oh, I don't trust.
I thought we were just hanging out.
Yeah.
I have cameras following me around all the time. I hear you're called Johnny Eyes.
That was my old job. So hi everyone, I'm Patrick Boyle. I'm the head of Codebase at Ginkgo. So if you've been an avid follower of our investor materials, you'll see that there are kind of two key parts of the Ginkgo platform: our foundries and our Codebase. Codebase is a term borrowed from software. Essentially, the idea being that if you're a app developer in software, you don't want to start from scratch every time you want to develop a new app. You want to be able to leverage the existing kind of libraries and modules that other people have built that can be reused to create new applications. So if you're a Python developer who works in with scientific computing, like SciPy and NumPy are modules and libraries that you just have to use to get your work done. We think about programming biology the same way, which is it's not just good enough to be able to read and write DNA and see what happens. We want to do that repeatably over many projects and learn from that work. So eventually building out biological code base that's analogous to what software developers use. So for example, code base for us may mean parts libraries. So over the dozens of projects that we've done, which parts have high performance in which organisms, and can we reuse them in a new context for a new project. We also think of Codebase as highly engineered cells that can be used as a basis for new work. One kind of metaphor we borrowed as well from software is thinking about, rather than software development kits, cell development kits. So what are the kind of tools and approaches and reusable modules that you can use to quickly build an app in a new cell, by taking advantage of everything that we've done before. So that's kind of my focus here at Ginkgo, is making sure that we're growing that asset. The folks on the Codebase team are cell programmers, that people will carry out those projects. So just like in software, the best people to develop Codebase in your particular area are the people who have to write apps in that area to get work done, right? So organized such that our cell programmers are folks who are developing that Codebase. Just in terms of background, I've been at Ginkgo for almost 9 years now. I joined straight out of grad school, so my graduate work was on systems and synthetic biology. And one story I like to tell, just to kind of illustrate what's different between what I did in grad school and we do here at Ginkgo now, is that I did a PhD in synthetic biology. One of the the founders were kind of a few years ahead of me, so they got to be involved in the ground floor of founding synthetic biology. I was kind of the first cohort of graduate students who actually started their graduate studies in synthetic biology. So I was very ambitious, wanted to do as much DNA synthesis as I could. I designed and synthesized a grand total of 6 genes over the course of my entire PhD. It was very expensive to do.
Were you a good grad student? Did you have good hands?
I had good hands.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah.
Steady hands, diamond hands.
Yeah. 48-hour time point experiment. I had to take samples every 4 hours for 48 hours to study circadian rhythm in a bug I was trying to engineer. So yeah,
48 hours straight.
diamond hands. Yeah.
When did you sleep?
I played StarCraft to stay awake.
You stayed awake the whole time?
Yeah. Well, no. I took a 4 hour. I took a couple of naps, but yeah, basically it was up the whole
I stayed up the whole time. Oh, I took a couple of minutes. One of those was in my bed.
Like, this is why I can't show you my Reddit history, because the last time I used Reddit, I documented this experiment. So,
Slowly descending into insanity.
yeah. I actually did an AMA, just like I had people ask questions about my experiment, talk about the experiment, but anyway, synthesized 6 genes. It was expensive to do. Basically, the tools we had to design those genes back in those days were not much better than Microsoft Word. Today at Ginkgo, we're designing thousands of genes every month, right? And the way that we do that, and actually what I spent my first 5 years at Ginkgo doing is building out the teams that do all of our DNA design and all of our protein design. And those folks actually, like, most of what they do is write code, like mostly Python code. They write code all day to basically make better algorithms and approaches for designing thousands of DNA designs, thousands of protein designs to keep the boundaries going. So my background is a mixture of computational and experimental biology. In my grad work, I did a mix of both, and then I've been pretty focused on the computational side since then.
Is there a way to filter the ones we haven't answered?
No.
That's good. I just go.
Scroll.
Yeah, you could sort by new to get the
You
newest
get the new
questions,
stuff?
or by top.
Yeah, actually, I read Reddit a lot. I just don't post.
I know, that's what, yeah, exactly. I read all the time.
The
Yeah.
controversial actually questions are pretty interesting. I have one here. It might return to something, but I'll hit you, Patrick, with this one. So it says, would you mind? Ginkgo wants to make biology as easy to program as computers. We believe biology is like freakishly powered alien technology that's far more advanced than anything we mere mortals have managed to invent. That's what we said. Party operator 44 minutes ago said, have you even seen the things people do with computers?
Yeah, no, this goes back to caring about how our platform is used and thinking about biosecurity. Fundamentally, one of the things, why do we need foundries to do the work that we do? Is because engineering biology is hard, and you need to try thousands of designs to make progress in any sort of predictable manner, right? So that what that means is today when people are, say, designing DNA for a project, they just design a bunch of DNA, throw it into a cell, and see what works. There's not a lot of that's not from a programming perspective that we're programming at the machine code, right? Literally there are folks who are oh, I see that this is a AT-rich sequence. I thought we were trying to optimize our algorithms to be more GC-rich in this area. Let's try that out, et cetera, et cetera. But you're even the cell programmers we have here at Ginkgo, we're using algorithms to design all the designs that we test. But people care about that base pair level of detail. They get under the hood and look at that individual base pairs and make changes, right? That's not higher order programming as we know today, right? That's machine code versus, say, something like Python. Right. So the opportunity here is that as we make engineering biology more predictable and you develop higher order languages, you also get to determine intent, right? So for example, if you want to, if you're coding in Python, you're not moving bits between memory registers. You're saying, I want to do this for loop, right? So it's a human readable set of instructions that gets compiled down to what the computer actually does. If we get to that mode in biology and we're making a lot of progress, going in that direction, then you actually get a lot more insight into what people are trying to do with the programming, right? What that means from a biosecurity perspective is you can start to think about what are the types of operations that you want to throw a warning into the code and say are you sure that you wanted to do this? There's actually real examples of this in practice today. So Ginkgo is part of a group called the International Gene Synthesis Consortium. This is a group of companies all around the world that print DNA. And the idea is if you're part of this club and you print DNA, you're going to follow these rules when it comes to biosecurity. And the simplest set of rules here is everything you synthesize, you should screen it against this list of things that are really bad to make, and you don't make them, right? And that's a very low level kind of security measure. But as you imagine, as you move to higher order levels of programming with biology, you can put in ever more your controls that you can place into that can get ever smarter. And it's like error correction in modern programming languages, right? You can start to capture exceptions and block people from doing that, because most people who are like programming biology don't want to do that stuff, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's something we have to keep thinking about as we get more sophisticated at designing biology.
I have a different question here from Farrell and Prague, kind of along those lines. But so you had a PhD in this, a decade ago. What skills would you want to see today in a computer scientist or programmer that wants to join Ginkgo? Do they have to have PhDs, or is the required education level going down from your perspective?
Yeah, I was actually I was talking to a grad school friend the other day about this, and I actually feel like I probably should have dropped out of my PhD and joined Ginkgo like a year earlier to make this point better, because I fundamentally don't think that a PhD is required to excel in synthetic biology, and particularly at a place like Ginkgo. I think your ceiling in a place like Ginkgo, a fast-growing company that's trying to do big things, is based on like how much you can grow in the role here, not what degree you came in with, right? And I think from that perspective, I think the academic community is coming around to this, but like certainly when I left my PhD to join Ginkgo, it was like my career was ending, right? Like it's like you are leaving the academic track, right? Why get a PhD if you're not going to do a postdoc, become a professor, etc. Like once you do this, you can never come back, like sort of thing. And I think it's like that is really being driven by like people don't understand the breadth of opportunities that exists in industry now. And I think one of the cool things about synthetic biology is it brings people from outside of biology who don't have those that view on things into the fold as well. But ultimately, no, I don't think a PhD is required. I think we certainly do have a lot of PhDs on staff, but fundamentally there's no difference in terms of advancement here at Ginkgo if you have a PhD or not. It's all about how you develop here, what you do, more than the kind of the degree you come in with.
Cool.
Jason, I just responded to one, but I tagged you because I think you should weigh in. What hurdle are you most proud of overcoming at Ginkgo?
Hurdle?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good question. I am proud that we have overcome the hurdle of really good sort of cell engineering scientists not quitting because the platform sucks so bad 5 years ago. Yeah. Because we were telling people to use our infrastructure and our internal services to do work that they used to do with like a team of really good scientists around them working at lab benches. And so they would have certain expectations for the deliverables of our services off the platform that they're using to do their work. And we were coming up dramatically short. And so they'd be like, this fucking sucks. Yeah. Remember those days, Patrick?
Oh, yeah. I remember when I showed up, it was like, wait, this is what the robots do?
So, and so there's a real hurdle there because, you want the best, you want these people that have all this amazing intuition about the biology who are really great cell programmers. But in order to actually get work done, you have to be able to do the lab work, right? And so, that some people muscle through it just because they believe the dream. Nowadays, it's easier because the platform's just better. But
no, but really, like you had to go through this period.
Yeah,
right,
it
where,
sucked.
like you had to, eat your vegetables
Yeah.
and like use the automation even when the automation was not ready to replace what you could do yet, just to make sure we could build the platform and scale it.
100% correct. Yeah, and you were under pressure to do that because you were actually doing a project for a customer.
Right.
And so like that was a very, you were operating in the service of the collective by using the platform because you knew things would get better. But in your immediate interests, it was shitty.
Sounds like a dynamic equilibrium that was hard to stay in.
Yeah. I mean, it was well, people. Yeah. Anyway, a lot of people at Ginkgo are here because they believe the long view of what we're going to be able to make the technology do over time. Even today, for a certain type of project, certain things are going to be frustrating, and then you're going to hit the point where you're like, I really really want to like be able to do this type of thing. Even though Ginkgo's the best place in the world to do it, I still know that like the platform needs to get 2 or 3 years better to unlock that next kind of cell programming project, like that level of complexity. That'll frustrate people.
Yeah.
But if they don't use the platform in that area, we won't. It makes it harder for the platform team to build the right stuff. So
That's actually the hurdle I worry about the most now, is that we get complacent with how we do things now.
correct,
Right?
correct, yeah.
That like, we almost have to, we always have to be on that trajectory of making the platform better, just because like, we have a long way to go to make biology easy to engineer. So.
Yep, I couldn't agree more.
Anna Marie, you are ripping through these. These are incredible.
Would you like to know my typing speed?
Do you know it?
No, I do.
What
I've
is
won,
your typing?
I've won several bets on this topic. I'd be happy to have a competition right here.
And like what your
It has to
speed?
be error adjusted.
What does error adjusted mean?
Like you get
Oh,
deductions.
error
adjusted.
adjusted. Okay, got it. Oh, so you get deductions if you mess it up.
No,
All
you're
right, let's do
screwed.
it. How do we do it? Let's go. What is
Okay,
there?
you just like
type.
type.
Do I go to a website?
I don't know, like find it like typing
Typing
speed test.
speed test. Yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it.
Typingtest.com.
Typingtest.com. Is that
All right, typingtest.com.
Okay, are we doing?
1 minute test, medium text.
Okay.
You guys see this?
Yeah, of course.
All right, let's go.
Wait,
Do we do any handicap?
how do I know when I start? Oh, it starts when I start typing. Oh, I gotta go like capital letters. Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah, this is over.
So Patrick.
Yeah, while they're doing that.
I have NCD 111004 ask a question here. I'll ask you, and then we can get the result, and then you can answer. So it says, "Hi, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this Q&A. I have a couple quick questions. One, where do you see AI and machine learning playing a role in the field of biotechnology? Would AI be able to design cellular systems and model unique molecular structures to allow for greater advancement? It would be very interesting to integrate neural networks with body structures to simulate a sort of artificial evolution. I imagine like of a compound in the body or something. Do you have any internships or program opportunities for people that want to learn more about this or do this? And how do you foresee medicine, personalized medicine, and specifically being balanced enough to provide effective treatments without oversaturating a strained healthcare system with cosmetic and unethical treatments? So I think 2 questions here: AI and machine learning, and then applications in healthcare.
Twice the speed. Yeah. I got a little crown. Yeah. That counts as fluent. I'm fluent.
What is my, wait, what
You're
does mine say?
above pro.
Wait,
Yeah, like, yeah.
Your midichlorian counts for the
Yeah.
charts.
Anna Marie wins some Ginkgo merch.
Yeah.
Please send some to her.
And my old boss was like, there's no way. He typed it like 90 words a minute. That was pretty hot shit. There's no way you type above 100 words a minute. And I was like, I think so. Like when I was like 8, my dad told me he'd buy me a dress at Walmart if I could type more than 100 words a minute. It's very motivating at the time.
If I say 200, do I get 2? Like 300, I get 3.
I'm not going to enter this particular contest. I'll just say my ATCG speed is pretty fast.
Yeah.
Especially
tell,
on a
the people,
typewriter.
tell the people what we're doing with our S1.
I encoded our S4 DNA, and by I mean I read a
Nice
paper.
team
and-
spirit
yeah.
there. We, and by we, I mean I. No one else.
And we led the team that actually put the actual document together, which is extremely important so we can actually go public. And then
500 pages.
I spent 15 minutes running. I spent 15 minutes
Christ.
running a script that converted those zeros and ones to A's, T's, C's, and G's. And we
I
printed,
did not write our S4 in zeros and ones.
but you did using a higher order programming language.
That's right,
an
yes.
interface, right? That translates
You
your
did.
intent. Your intent was what you didn't know it, but your intent was actually to commit a bunch of ones and zeros to a server somewhere, and just the computer could do that. But anyway, so I spent 15 minutes running a script that I found on the internet to encode, the S4 document, actually a zipped archive of the S4 document into DNA. DNA is actually a highly dense data storage medium. So we're going to be basically creating, handing out versions of that document encoded in DNA. And if you're so inclined, you can sequence that DNA and decode it to get our S4 document back. And you can actually, it's actually a zipped archive in the HTML file. So you can embed images, et cetera. It's just a data storage medium. but maybe quickly to get back to the kind of question on AI in biology and where that's going. I think look out on Twitter today because DeepMind use their open source version of AlphaFold to put out structures for every protein in the human genome. I think the yeast genome and some other genomes. That's super exciting. That's using AI to like predict protein folding. That's super cool. It's really indicative of how quickly the field is moving. I think what you'll see, and this is what I think you see in most cases in AI, is that if you can reduce, like, there are certain like things that are like straightforward for AI, like image recognition, right? If you can format your data as an image, there are a lot of things you can do. So there are actually breakthroughs in DNA sequencing happening by the application of image recognition via AI to DNA sequencing, for example, because it's basically just an image recognition problem. But the AlphaFold thing is interesting because now we'll see if the structures are good enough. But like prior to when I was in grad school, like and still today, most progress around figuring out the structure of proteins is around physically crystallizing the protein and measuring it with an X-ray. You do that one protein at a time, and it used to be you do an entire PhD in one protein. The AlphaFold results are pretty impressive in terms of comparing their prediction to what you actually see when you crystallize a protein for all the proteins that we've tested so far. And now they've applied it to multiple genomes. So you have they're going to have, I think there's going to be like 100 million structures that they're going to create, and like researchers can use that, see how comparable they are to real structures, and if they look good, it's like a big breakthrough driven by AI and protein structure. Where I'm going with this though is that this is just the beginning of that application, right? Now what do all those proteins do, right? So what I get excited about is basically taking that sort of structural information, and a lot of our protein engineers use very similar tools to predict protein folds already, is like then actually print out the DNA that encodes those proteins, boot them up in the foundry and see what they do, generate data on that, train models on that, and actually get towards predictive models of how protein structure goes to function. That's a much harder problem, but I think where the field is going, and in terms of what we do at Ginkgo, I think what's enabling there is the ability to just like physically test thousands and thousands of proteins and gather data on them. One other cool example of AI that Ginkgo is working on, actually back in the area of biosecurity, is we have we're part of a program with the U.S. government that's around identifying engineered DNA in DNA sequencing data. So the idea is that could you create a forensic tool where if somebody said, hey, this person got this new virus, we sequenced it, is it engineered? Could you develop an AI that predicts whether a new sequence is engineered or not? That turned out to be very practical in the case of SARS-CoV-2, where people in this program actually ran those models to show that no, it has a lot of resemblance to known coronaviruses and is like almost certainly not engineered. But you can imagine the utility of this tool in the future to basically be a forensic tool to detect misuse or even just engineered DNA where it shouldn't be, for example. The way we develop those models here at Ginkgo is by developing AI models that are trained on our entire engineered sequence database. And in fact, these models are very data hungry, so we actually created a secondary synthetic database of even more sequences to make sure that we're actually training our models correctly. But basically, that's one big application of AI here at Ginkgo is that application I've been talking about, that forensic tool, is basically running our design tools in reverse. So the reason why we like that project is not just from a biosecurity standpoint, but the more you understand about how our sequences differ from natural sequences, the better you can get at designing sequences that function well in biological systems. So, like that's a cool application of AI that's close to DNA design that we're working on that I can talk about. There's a lot more in that question, but hopefully that gave you two examples of like AI and bio, and then how fast that field is moving.
That's very, very cool. And that project you were mentioning is an IARPA project called Felix, Finding Engineering-Linked Indicators. And for the first one, I mean, someone need only go on Twitter and find all the AlphaFold papers that are coming out that people intend to do. And can people follow you to learn about what you're reading and posting?
Yeah, I am P_Maverick.
And he is hungry for likes. Would you like to tell the people about your low base efforts last week to generate likes?
Well, I'm a very serious person with a very serious job, but I also like to post dumb things on Twitter. And Ginkgo has a very unusual lab space. So like, for biologists, even if a biologist walked through Ginkgo's labs, it doesn't look like a normal biology lab. And one of the cool things about it is we have so many robots everywhere, and every robot that we have has like a kill switch attached to it. And actually a number of our systems are actually multiple robots working together, and each individual piece has like an emergency stop button on it, and they're all red, and they glow red when you click them. They're very satisfying to click, and they look really cool. And we had 2 buttons in a control room that we're building, and the control room is not online yet, but you have basically 2 big red buttons on the wall behind like plastic safeguards. And I posted on Twitter that if I got 1,000 likes, I would press those buttons. And it took a few days because after I got 1,000 likes, I had to do the safety review to make sure that in fact I wouldn't break things if I pressed those buttons. And then I pressed them. So, it's pretty busy day balancing like, actual science with pressing buttons on Twitter. So.
It's amazing.
I love that.
Kind of had to be there. So.
I was there. That was awesome.
Yeah, just wanted to flag we have about 10 minutes left of this
I'm not gonna stop. This is
AMA. Yeah, well, we might go a little bit longer. Folks should continue to ask questions on the Reddit link that's on our Twitter and in all of our live stream links. Yeah, what do you think people should be asking more questions about based on what they've gotten so far? People are asking a lot of cool questions about the platform, applications to other science. They're asking us about our company structure, how we interact with other companies, what books we've read. What do you think people should be thinking about and asking about that? Not a very FAQ for you.
I'm always interested in what new kind of product directions people want to take. I think, we've seen this in a lot of different platforms and contexts, right? So, like the entire field of synthetic chemistry, right? Like moving carbon atoms around to make, plastics and everything else. Like that field started by a bunch of organic chemists trying to make blue dye, because at that time, making blue dye was the killer app. If you could figure out how to make a pH-stable blue dye, you'd rule the universe, and like everyone developed all the tools of synthetic chemistry in this race to create a blue dye.
It was like the Phoenicians, like thousands of years ago, but
This was actually over the
is
mid 1800s through the 20th century.
Yep.
And actually, and what did the 20th century do? Create lots of amazing synthetic chemistry. Like all the synthetic materials we have today was created by that, and actually we're still looking for a satisfying blue dye, right? So creating these the kind of race to create new products often creates platforms where the actual applications of those platforms weren't envisioned when you first got started. Like the other more modern example of this would be mobile app stores, right? Like think of the apps that came with the original iPhone versus what the iPhone is used for now. Like certainly Apple didn't have any of those applications in mind, right? Like it's because a community of developers saw that, hey, this is a cool platform that can reach a lot of people. You came up with all sorts of interesting applications of mobile apps, because the developer community grew up, right? So I think, one of the things I think is exciting about synthetic biology is 10 years ago, 15 years ago, even 20 years ago, the whole field was focused on biofuels, right? And I still think there are a lot of useful applications where you can use biology to replace a fossil-based fuel source, but it's certainly not the focus of the field anymore. And I think look at things like plant-based foods, that wasn't on anyone's radar 10 years ago. So what I get excited about and what I'd be interested in hearing from folks about are what are the applications of biology that you're not hearing about? Because I think those are really there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think there's gonna be a lot of really amazing new companies that can use a platform like Ginkgo's to get started, that are working on some application that nobody plant-based foods. There are a lot of people working on that now, right? But what's going to be the surprising application on the platform? I get excited when people have kind of out there ideas that can map to biology there.
We asked Tom this question, and we've talked about it, Patrick, but what's one problem that you would wish to solve with synthetic biology?
Climate change.
Aside from climate change,
that
what's number
was
two?
Tom's too.
What's number two?
Yeah.
That's the fucking thing.
It's like everyone thinks that's a subtopic. That's the topic. That's the whole thing.
Well, so here's the thing. Biology is going to be perfectly fine, right? Climate change isn't about biology. It's about us, right? And it's about anyway. Okay, but not climate change.
Sure.
I really think I think materials are just like, if you think about the diversity of materials in the natural world versus what we have at our disposal today, it's just like, it's not a fair fight, right? Like, you know, there is like investment in stuff like spider silk or, you know, mushroom-based leather, and that's like the beginning, right? These are at first these are like, you know, fashion-based materials that have unique properties, but like think about like structural materials, right? If you could make, you know, steel cabling out of something like spider silk, right? You know, composite materials made of biology, like biology is like nano pattern 3D printed, right? So if you had something that is like that complex that you could design and control, like imagine making, you know, entire, like you can make an airplane that was covered in cuttlefish skin is actually one thing I want to make, right? So like cuttlefish skin, you know, can actually be any color that you want because it's covered in different pores that you open and close that have pigment exposed in them. So like literally cuttlefish can be whatever color it wants. It can make patterns. It can shift around. And remember that that's a program that's encoded in, you know, picograms of DNA that makes this whole organism that has all those properties. So I think, yeah, materials is the thing that's exciting to me, like outside of climate change, just like imagining what you could make. Like the thing that's kind of boring about like kind of typical industrial biology, important but boring to me, is like making drop-in replacements for things that already exist. But like making next generation materials, like color shifting materials, nano pattern materials, like biology does that already. We just don't know how to program it yet.
So at where I thought you were going to go, so people that follow you on Twitter, that follow us on Twitter, might know that you know, they're part of a growing movement known as the Wood Gang. What is it about wood in particular that's worth getting excited about? It sounds like it's actually something to do with this. These are things that grow themselves.
Yeah, well, okay, so I was trying to give the serious answer, but yeah, I am, like, but like, yeah, we joke about wood, but like, think about it. Wood is actually an extremely versatile biomaterial, right? You make it from CO2 for free, right? So you take a seed, you put it in the ground, and it turns into like building material for you, right? And in terms of like 100% of the carbon in a tree comes from the atmosphere. So like, you know, first of all, just from a like practical application, like again, talking about climate change, but like, you know, think of all the like the industries that have been disrupted by our move away from paper. Like, so the pulp and paper industry, like we used to grow a lot of trees just to make paper. You know, why not transition that carbon sink into, you know, making something else? But no, like I think wood is actually, it's a funny example. I think where, I'm trying to remember where we first started talking about this, but you know, a friend of mine who also talks about this on Twitter, like used to have a quiz to give to new graduate students when they joined the program, and it was like, the question was like, how would you design a chair with biology? And of course, everyone would be thinking about, okay, like maybe I want an animal, and I know that Hox genes impact limb growth, so I'll program Hox genes to blah blah blah. And then, you know, his answer would always be, I would take some wood and I would carve it until I had a chair, right? And like, you know, the basic idea, right, is that like we actually have been using biology to make things for a really long time, right? Like synthetic biology is about increasing the programmability of matter, but we can do a lot of stuff with biological matter already, right? And like, what gets exciting to me is like, it's just embarrassing how shitty our synthetic materials are that we use compared to what, you know, matter does every day. Like, trees grow bark to protect themselves, right? Think of like chameleons and the qualities of their skin, or like, you know, C4 plants, CAM plants selectively open and close pores on their surface just to control their CO2 flux, right? It's just like nanoscale patterning across acres and acres of plants. You know, like you can't do that without biology, and we just have to learn how to program that.
Does that mean you take inspiration from human beings that have been, you know, like incredible craftspeople with wood, or that have been domesticating yeast for a very long time when we do work like this? Like, do we look towards industries that have been around for thousands and thousands of years, and crafts that have been around for thousands of years, as you do this, you know, highly abstracted or increasingly abstracted programming?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and this is actually my retirement plan, is to open an artisanal yeast company where basically it would be a brewery / bakery, and all of the products, all the bread and all the beer would be made by GMO yeast that I would make in the old ways, right? So pipetting by hand, using original Cas9 to flip bits in the genome, just so people could appreciate the craftsmanship. That's why I wanted to do it in like 30 years. But yeah.
Good thing you have steady hands.
Yeah.
Once you've made biology easier to engineer.
Yeah. Cool. I better get going.
I know, yeah. Because I do a 4 o'clock meeting. You're gonna keep doing 120.
I just like,
120
how do you
words
leave,
per minute.
how do you leave questions unanswered?
I will get so I have a meeting from 4 to 5, and I'll see.
I don't know how we stop.
I'll look for high voted unanswered questions again. Then yeah.
I think,
I'll be here as long as you're
I
around.
think we get, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
do
think
it.
for like another 15 minutes or so.
I'll be around.
All right. Have
Thanks,
fun.
Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for all the good questions.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
Thanks, people.
You can
How many
always
people are watching? 44 people.
on different and that's
Very
on different platforms. You can always follow Jason at JR Kelly on Twitter.
J.R. Kelly.
All
All right. Okay. See you later.
See you
Thanks.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have a good
guys.
one.
Bye.
I'll plug my Twitter too.
Follow Patrick at P_Maverick because he is a
Maverick.
P_Maverick. Cool.
Just like type.
You can if you want. We can also jam and transcribe your answers if you want.
No, I think we're good.
Should we invite anyone else? Like we can go take a look around and see
We
who's
should get
around.
some random people.
Yeah, we can take a look
Yeah,
around.
Go,
If anyone
go
at
say hi.
Ginkgo,
Guys, say hi to the people.
hi.
You join the party over here.
I'm Joseph Fridman. I work on our creative team, and this is Jamila. You've seen us in the back.
Hi everyone, I work on the investor relations team.
Yeah, thrilled that we get to do this. So cool that y'all wanted to do this. Very excited about this. We're gonna go find I think
Find
some other
random
guests.
people.
Yes.
I'll just type quietly. Here.
Cool.
You guys can watch me type. It's like the gaming. I'm like a gamer. I'm like live streaming.
we
my
were
gaming.
considering making a Twitch for this, and we were like, well, what else?
Well,
would
then
we
yeah,
stream?
then people could have watched me type.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
could
We
have
can,
seen all the like.
next time we can get an overhead camera so that we can see the
How fast I
just
type.
sparks flying off.
Awesome.
There's just people also typing frantically but working as far as the eye can see. So
Oh, good.
I'll put something
Good
up
that
on
somebody's doing work.
the Slack.
What's the funniest question you've seen?
Yeah, I think people have one repetitive question about body enhancement, which is funny for some. But I
I
think
trust Grinko. Grinko will handle it.
Gringo got that one. No, these are great. These are clearly folks that are.
They know what's up. Huh?
Yeah, they've been following along for a while, which is awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of creativity here too. It's nice. You get like different audiences, like folks on the Twitter Spaces were very like business model, and here it's like science applications. So it's quite cool. There's a nice question I can answer here from. I can sit in front real quick.
Come hang out with me.
Yeah.
I hate leaving things unanswered. Like that's what's so hard.
There's so many-
How do other people do it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll definitely go back and clip some of the stuff we talked about, some of the stuff we've transcribed. We'll post that. Yeah, there was a nice question here about are you guys still following the iGEM competition?
Yes, I did iGEM.
Yeah, and if yes, what's the most astounding project you've seen? And do you know what percentage of Ginkgo employees are ex-iGEM candidates?
That number, I think I think it's like
It's dozens.
15%
Yeah.
or something
Yeah,
like
huge.
that. It's like a pretty big percent given how many employees we have.
Both of us. Yeah, I mean, I
What was your project?
So I was like human practices on our project, so I
Wait,
wasn't
did you
really
say
involved.
ninth grade?
So in ninth grade, I wasn't on a team, but I went to this program called MIT Splash, and there was a team there presenting, I'll never forget, on a notch delta, which is like a way, like it's a type of like gene expression, and when genes are together, it's how the cells decide which to grow hair on your skin.
Huh.
It's like this like hexagonal model for differentiating relative to the information you're getting around. It's very efficient, and it was this class with these MIT students who were describing how you could actually use notch delta as the basis for other types of programming in cells to create all sorts of different patterns of expression. And I remember that, and that blew me away. So that when I was in college and I heard that we had an iGEM team, I was like, I don't know how to do wet lab work, but I just have to join this. And you were a math major.
I was a molecular biology major,
Yes.
and then I did iGEM, and then I switched to math because biology is too hard to
It
engineer.
was hard, yeah.
It's hard, and you spend a lot of days alone in a lab pipetting by yourself. And I wanted to have more friends, so I became a math major. Good life choices.
Chalkboard work with friends.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think, we're the folks that founded Ginkgo and a ton of other folks at MIT at the time and from from colleges across the country started iGEM, I think it's fair to say. And then a lot of us just got inspired by that. I think the same way probably that kids get inspired by first robotics and then they want to become engineers, or you get inspired by whatever type of project team or extracurriculars you have available to you. And so, we love iGEM. We love our iGEM alums. And then astounding project you've seen. I mean, I think everyone has their own favorites, and they vary. There's some artistic ones. We're talking about iGEM projects, yeah. Artistic ones. There's some incredible technical feats. There are iGEM projects that get commercialized for hundreds of millions of dollars, which is kind of wild to do that as an undergrad doing biology. So that's a great question, and that was from Abs Askable 101 and Sharist DIY Bio seconded that question. So I'll clip this and respond to that later for sure. Oh, do you want to come in?
Come on in. Say hi to the people.
Oh,
Tell them about what you do and why you're running around like a pirate.
Arr.
introduce yourself to the feed.
I'm David. I am a pirate here at Ginkgo. Ginkgo's secret project is to look for buried gold.
There was a great New York Times on piece recently on the people love metal detecting now. There's a whole subculture again.
What is a metal detector?
What team are you on, David?
I'm on the software Decepticons team.
Cool. What's that? That sounds like do you transform things?
Actually, yes.
Tell us about it.
While I'm not looking for gold, I'm working on software that is essentially like a big inventory database for Ginkgo. Every sequence, every reagent, every sample, we track how much there is in what containers and so on. And one of the things that we do is we actually record bioinformatics operations that, for example, we're transforming a strain. We are taking a double-strand DNA and integrating it into the genome of a strain. So that would we actually call that operation transform, and that actually does happen. Although I don't think that's the reason we're called Decepticons. I think that's because the automation team called themselves the Autobots for perhaps more obvious reasons, and we figured we're kind of like their counterpart, so that's how we became Decepticons.
Cool. And so that's really, really important to build all these systems and this big brain kind of underneath Ginkgo to keep track of all the material in the labs and all the transformations and all the people that interact with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And how'd you find Ginkgo? How'd you get to Ginkgo?
You didn't know you were going to be famous.
Yeah, I did not come prepared. I don't know if there's still people watching out there, but
What are your life dreams? Well, let's see. There are 27 people still.
Yeah.
okay.
But who knows?
They
how many
probably are
times-
all in this building.
Yeah, so I guess you know, for people who are not in this building, this is completely not planned. I literally just saw on Slack that we're doing this and realized that this room is near where I'm sitting and figured I'd, you know, get some toys and walk around in the background. So completely unplanned. How did I find Ginkgo?
Yeah.
So it was actually a former manager of mine at my previous job came to work here at Ginkgo in 2019. And then heard about it from him. You know, we talked, like, I think what sold me was he described to me the Echo liquid transfer machine.
Oh, that thing's cool. Tell everybody about it.
So the basic premise is when you have to transfer like large quantities of liquid, you can use like a Hamilton robot that, you know, has pipettes, sucks out, you know, milliliter quantities of liquid and puts it somewhere else. But if you have to transfer like nanoliters of liquid, you can't. That doesn't work anymore. So what they do is they take a well plate, like a plastic container with a bunch of holes in it that has a tiny amount of liquid, and then takes another, you know, identical plate and puts it over top of it. And then what happens is there's a sonic cannon underneath that can, like, using acoustics, figure out how much liquid there is, its density, and, you know, it's programming the distance between the two wells. And it fires like a precisely calibrated sonic pulse to cause exactly one droplet of liquid to bounce from the bottom to the top, and then it sticks because of surface tension. So you can, like, you know, repeat that on multiple times across multiple wells to actually do like nanoliter scale transfers.
And watching this thing move around to like multiplex like the samples at some rate into the from the source into the target is wild to watch. And so what sort of skills did you have when you got to Ginkgo? Like, did you study CS in college and work in CS?
Yeah. So I studied CS in college. At my last job, I actually worked on robotics. Should I say where I worked before? Is that like kosher?
Fine with me. Yeah. All good.
Probably on your LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
It's highly confident, unless it was like the CIA,
Yeah.
top secret
No,
clearance.
no,
So like
no,
you
no.
probably got training in that. Or he was in the CIA, and then this is the backup. This is like the cover job.
Yeah.
You're being really coy about the cover.
Yeah,
job.
I mean, like my first cover about searching for gold was not so great. But this one's more.
Pirate operational security is a low.
My last job, I worked for the part of Amazon that did warehouse robotics.
Oh, cool.
So there's you know, a bit of relationship with the robotics, but it was just really funny because the last thing I worked on was essentially like a container management system. So, you know, working in terms of like what is in which container and what are the barcodes on these containers and where are they located and so on. I get to Ginkgo and I was like, oh, the software I'm working on is also about containers and barcodes on these containers again. So there's like a neat little symmetry. And the other neat symmetry was a lot of our robotics automation at Ginkgo, we use this industry standard term called work cells. I didn't realize this industry standard term until I came here, because at Amazon it's also called work cells because, you know, it's industry standard. So then it was like, oh, you guys also call it work cells? It's pretty crazy.
Cool, yeah. And so I think, yeah, as people watch about different, like videos about different bioworks, as they see, you know, samples moving around, they'll see little barcodes on them. Like, you've designed the systems that make sure that when something gets scanned, the computer system underneath all of it knows what's in it and is moving it to the right place, thinks that it's the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, some very smart people design that stuff, and I happen to be the last person maintaining it. But yes.
What are some of the other teams in software? So you said Autobots. I imagine they do automation support as well.
Yeah. So they're I guess less of a software team. You know, again,
Sure.
we have like this classification of what is considered in the foundry and what is considered digital technology. So I think one way of drawing that line is like, if it's hardware, if you're programming hardware, if what you do controls a machine, that's going to be in the automation team, call themselves the Autobots. So within software, there's my team, Decepticons. We do inventory tracking, a workflow management system on top of that to figure out how to move that inventory. There's a team that works, I think, that does some really cool stuff where they're essentially building for software people, an IDE, an integrated development environment for DNA.
Cool.
So it's a highly visual tool. You can actually like drag and drop blocks. So, you know, for biologists out there, there's like these design units that you would call like a terminator or like a tag that you would put into a protein so that it would stick to a particular surface when you purify the protein that you're on, and then promoters to actually get the protein to translate. So like these are some examples blocks, lots more out there. And you can actually like drag and drop these blocks into an editor and then send, like, you know, check it, like, can you actually build this? Is the GC, like the GC nucleotide content too high or something? And you can in that same tool, like, send it off to our partners in Twist or also within Ginkgo to assemble that strand of DNA.
I mean, I want to ask you a few more technical questions, but like, so you said you studied CS. What was it like to get into all of this bio knowledge? Is it like absorbable for people that have studied coding? Like, is it enough like coding to, so that if someone has only ever dealt with computer programming and not cell programming, for them to take their computer programming skills and start building cell programming tools?
I think what's really cool is there's a lot of good analogies between computer code and how that matches to cells. But I think like the general skills around like pattern matching, because like a lot of these bioinformatics operations, in software engineering, we write these things called unit tests, where you're testing like a small bit of code with example inputs and outputs. And like one of the maybe not the best way, but one of the best ways I've found to learn what these operations actually are is to look at the unit test and see like, here's 15 examples of inputs and outputs, and it's like, okay, now I think I pattern match, like, okay, if the sequence is like this and the other sequence is like this, then it will look like this when it comes out. So it's kind of like being able to have that pattern matching ability helps a lot. I personally regret not having learned so much biology in my life, but working here has been fantastic for making up for that. I've been trying to read this textbook called Molecular Biology of the Cell. All my
Tom
time.
Knight recommended this textbook to me the first
Oh
time.
yeah, oh, yeah, it's a fantastic textbook.
Cool. Yeah, and then what are you looking forward to working here? What's exciting to look forward to in terms of developing these tools?
I think Ginkgo is like a super ambitious company, and I'm just really excited to see what we will, because like what we have today is not going to solve for what we need 4 years from now.
Totally.
And there's a lot of new things that we'll have to build between now and then. So I'm just really excited to see how that plays out.
Cool. Yeah. And are there ways to keep up with that as like person on top? Like, do you go to like tech meetings for like the Foundry teams that are doing cell programming and stuff? Like, how do we as a company ensure that we all kind of are coordinated about like building these tools in ways that we're like figuring out as we build them what we need?
Yeah. I mean, there's like they're very structured ways. Like we have a lot of open Slack channels for this kind of stuff. There's every week we have a tech discussion, which rotates between, like when I say tech, it's like biology, it's actually digital technology, like it's all sorts of different kinds of how you do things. We rotate between that. There's weekly meetings within our teams, but I think there's all like serendipitous interactions. Like we're all in the same space. We can just, you walk by someone and hear about what they're doing, and that also is a really good way of spreading information.
Awesome. Yeah, and we get to go on live streams and watch each other.
Yeah,
which is awesome. Sweet.
Like super cool to be doing this, because like I did not start my day today thinking that I'd be.
It's always a mystery.
Where did the pirate hat and sword come from? What's the context?
Yeah, so like breaking the fourth wall a little for folks in the stream. Like it was like there's like a Slack thread that Joseph here put on Slack saying they're doing this live stream, and I was like, oh, it'd be really funny if somebody like put on a T-Rex costume and walked back and forth.
We're trying to find it. Yeah, someone like Dan Cahoon has like a dino costume somewhere. Yeah,
Dan apparently has one, but he's not in today. So like I ended up like walking all the way to like Bioworks 1 and back, like searching for a random craft to bring over, and I found the hat, the sword, a skeleton, some other costume stuff.
Classic.
So it's like I don't start my day at Ginkgo thinking that I end up doing this kind of stuff, but I end up doing it. It's quite fun.
Awesome. Yeah, and you guys choreographed a little stuff. If anyone else wants to come in and ask questions, that's totally cool. If you want to ask anybody else, we like to hear about people's work, and Anna Marie's still chugging on answers.
Yeah, for sure.
How are you doing?
Good, but there's so many I haven't.
I think they might not stop.
I think I'm getting close.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll go see if anybody else wants to stop by, but it was so nice to chat.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Oh, should people follow you on Twitter or anywhere else?
I would say no. I probably don't want to look at my Twitter.
Duly noted. Thank you.
What was your last tweet?
My last tweet? Oh, actually, you know what? There's a thing I should plug.
Please.
So there's the main Ginkgo Twitter at Ginkgo, but there's also at Ginkgo Bits, which is the digital technology Twitter. And I actually have tweeted through that Twitter account before. So like those are like the normal people tweets that you could see about me.
Yeah. So that's at Ginkgo Bits, and that's just different people on digital tech, on software, talking about like writing code to make cells do code.
Yeah, and actually speaking of like the computer analogies, like last week, my coworker David actually had like a bunch of examples of parallels between computing and biology. So at Ginkgo Bits on Twitter.
Yeah, highly recommend. It's a great follow. I learn a lot from that channel. It's awesome.
Cool. See you, folks.
See ya.
See ya,
Thanks.
David.
Yeah. So if folks really want their questions answered, you should coordinate with your friends to get them upvoted. Because Anna Marie, how are you sorting questions? What's your
I like alternate between the upvoted ones and the new ones, but I'm mostly on the new ones now, which
Awesome.
is not going to encourage this to end. So I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to do any new questions.
And I think one thing we should say is like we're pretty committed to chatting with folks interested in the company on a regular basis. So if folks miss this, this isn't their last opportunity
We're
to
all
chat.
over. We're all over.
Yeah. So what I might do actually, unless we get anybody coming in the next few minutes, is to end the stream, and then he'll just keep answering
Sounds
questions
great.
on Reddit. I'll give it a minute or two. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anybody slacking me that says they urgently want to come down. So I guess I'll just say
Bye, everyone.
thank you for
Thanks
joining us.
joining.
This was amazing. Follow us at Ginkgo on all these platforms. We'll keep posting, and then keep asking us your questions. We'd love to keep answering them, but
Sounds
maybe
good.
not on Reddit today.
Bye.